Next, we'll be moving to our Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind. And first on that agenda, we have Finance Director Carl Empey. Are you ready to come on board?
I am. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and board members. We're off to a good start financially. The report I'm going to give this morning is for the 2 months that ended August 31st. Our inflows, which primarily consists of state transfers from the capital, were $6.5 million. I'm just going to round. Our outflows or our expenses were just under $4 million. So we had $2.5 million more in inflows than we did on outflows. So we are financially solvent for the first 2 months and look to be in good shape as we start this new fiscal year. The number of students will be reporting as of the next month when we've got a full count for the month of September. The enrichment fund balance was $1.2 million, and our donated funds was $1,239,000. The next report, the budget status report, is just gives all the detail supporting those numbers that I just referenced. The report after that is our donated funds account. We've got currently $1.239 million of donated funds. The majority of that comes from one donor organization, the Norda Foundation, that just is in excess of $1 million. And then the last report is our enrichment funds. This is the money that comes from the Land Grant Trust Fund. Of the $1,084,000 in projects that you approved back in April, we've spent $108,000 so far, giving us a balance of just about $1 million left to be spent throughout the rest of the fiscal year. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, that you or the board members may have.
Okay. Questions, comments from board members? Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Carl.
Good morning.
I actually have a question on your growth this year. If I remember the chart from last week, the deaf and blind school did increase in number, but what is that percentage in comparison to what the increase you were planning to get, and how will that affect your budget?
Are you talking number of students, Board Member Belknap? We're going to be presenting the annual report, so maybe we can wait for that because they'll be discussing the number of students in that report. However, we're not like school districts. We don't get WPU, so our funding isn't going to change very much based on the number of students that we have.
Follow up.
Yes.
So how will that affect hiring of teachers if you have or releasing teachers if you have a high increase or a low increase of students?
That's a great question. We actually have built a business case, and as you may remember, last year we requested that the legislature fund 7 new educator positions that were initially approved, and then they retracted that based on decreased state revenues due to COVID. So we have to go to the state and ask them for additional funding for the new educator positions that we need. We're having those internal discussions right now to maybe address that with this next legislative session.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from board members? The enrichment funds, I've got a question on that. There's usually been some spend plans, and with COVID, it seems like it's changing a little bit. Maybe this is a question for the superintendent. The superintendent can weigh in if you can't answer. Is that are we still able to benefit are students able to benefit from those enrichment funds with this, with now that we're dealing with COVID?
They are. In fact, because of COVID last spring, we did not execute some of our enrichment programs that were, temporarily suspended, and so we actually will have ongoing carry forward this year more than we would have normally, slightly more, because we just didn't spend it all down. So they can still benefit. And what we've done is we actually still had a lot of summer camps and other things that were funded with that. But generally they are benefiting from that. And obviously there's a few things that we won't do until the restrictions are lifted, like our study abroad and a couple things like that. Also, while I have the microphone, Susan Patton, our associate superintendent for the blind school, is waiting to be let into the meeting. If we could get her approved, that would be really great.
Okay, I believe that request has been heard, so let me know if it's not happening.
Okay.
And then we'll bring it up again. So I
Is she the telephone number? We have a telephone number.
Yes, I believe she is.
Her number is 801. Oh, wait, let me see. 380-493.
It is her.
Oh yeah, okay. So it looks like she's on there now. Great, by telephone at least. You won't be able to see her, but that's better than nothing. Thank you.
Okay, well, I just want to follow up a little bit more on the enrichment funds. Yeah. It seems like USDB is constantly reinvents themselves very creatively. And so I'm curious, do you have anything on the horizon that's a little different than the norm on using these enrichment funds?
Not so well, not so far. We are going to be, we've met with the advisory council, but we haven't presented them with the new plan for the next year yet.
Okay.
Actually, no, that was approved previously, and it was some of the similar things we've already done. But what we've been doing is working on the foundation a little bit to bring in additional donated funds for when we get real creative and it's outside the scope of enrichment funds or taxpayer funding.
Okay.
Things like providing, some of our families are in need, of course, of some basic necessities. And so we've had the Wagner Foundation, for example, that donated $10,000 to us recently for things like hats and coats and gloves and just those types of things. But as far as the enrichment funds, generally the program is the same types of things you've seen in the past.
Okay. Well, thank you, Superintendent. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Carl, are you?
That's my financial report, Mr. Chair.
You don't have anything else to add, and I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our annual report. Superintendent Coleman, I'll have you take point on this.
Thank you. So our annual report draft is prepared for the board to review, and you should have it in your packet. It looks, in formatting, it looks similar to previous years with a new cover photo. I just have your regular superintendent message at the beginning. And then it goes right into the data immediately that is required by the state legislature. And we have links to more data, but we thought putting directly in the report, we would just put what's required there, and then they can look on our website where we have a lot more information and lots of reading if people are interested. So with that, I think what I will do is just allow the associate superintendents who compiled this and monitor it during the year, and their staffs are the ones that report out on it. I'll have them go ahead and walk through the report with the members of the board. Normally we do this time of year, but we do it in our annual meeting, and that date has been changed. So we just did it during a regular meeting with you. And after we we will take any feedback you have, and after our meeting today, we will submit this to the legislature to fulfill the requirement to submit the annual report to them. The nice thing is they removed from their requirements that we go and meet in front of them and have a discussion about it, which we actually enjoyed, but all we have to do is submit it to them now, and then generally during the legislative session, when we go in front of them, they ask us questions based on this. So anyway, with that, I will have Superintendent Tanner start the deaf schools at the beginning, and then Superintendent Patton can talk about the blind school after she's done. So Michelle, go ahead.
Good morning, board members. Hey, I wanted to start off, the first thing you see at the top is we talk about the enrichment programs, and as Chair Huntsman was mentioning, we like to be innovative. So what you will not see and what you will not see is that there's a huge change, as Superintendent Coleman mentioned, but we will see a change in how we're delivering some of the enrichment programs. For example, the reading clinic we're doing online, and we're able to do that at home and individually with students. So that'll be some of the ways that some of the things will change that we use for the enrichment program. And if you scroll down to the next page, I can show you some of the graphs that will be helpful. So this is for the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, so both schools. Last year, we served 4,585 students. So you can see that primarily we're serving most students in providing audiological services. And our next biggest piece of the pie is PIP. Afterwards, we do a lot with districts, and we are going out to the districts and assisting them. And you'll see that the smaller piece of the pie is actually our campus program, but they need more intensive services there. So those are very important services to the students who desperately need them. And then the bulk of them are across the state. If you look by location down on the left, you can see that most of our students, again, it just takes and shows you that 45% of the students are in the outreach. Then we have PIP, and then the 14% that are in the classrooms are campus-based programs. On the right is the breakdown of the actual campus-based programs. Where do we have the students enrolled in our campus-based programs? So you can see that the Jean Mousseau School has the larger number than KBS, and then EDS, and then listening and spoken language, and then the blind school. If we scroll down, we can get another way. We just keep on showing you different ways to look at the information. So across the entire state, both campus-wide and outreach, you can see we're pretty much split about the same. There's a slight bit larger number actually in the blind school. We just primarily serve those students across the outreach. So if you look at the graph to the right, within PIP, the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf have pretty much even numbers. In the classrooms, you'll see primarily deaf students are in the campus-based programs. And that on the other side, the outreach program, you'll see that primarily that's where the blind students are served, and there are less students served by the deaf on that side. So you kind of get to the 53, 48, or 53 to 47%, which is the graph on the right, very similar. Next, we talk about one of the things we're asked to talk about is our graduation rate. Again, we continue to have 100% graduation. It's kind of easy, I guess, in a way when we are really attentive and we know these children like our own children, they're kind of family. And so we're vested very deeply in every single one of them because there's a few of them we can really get attentive to them, and they've been graduating. It's been a good job with a different graduation year, but it worked out. Next, if you could mind scrolling up. Here we're going to talk about the student outcomes. I'm going to highlight the graphs because I think that's easiest for people to understand. And if you would like, you're welcome to read the text. So people often ask how we're serving students. If you look at the outreach, this is across the state, not our campus programs, you'll notice that primarily they're served in a spoken language environment. So you have 62% that are served and they use just audition. We give them audiological services and we have speech services. And then on the other side, where those who are signing in the outreach, those are the students that use interpreters and have outreach teachers that use sign language to talk with them, and often also get speech as well. Now, if you flip it and you're looking internally at the campus programs, you can see the demographic changes. Primarily in the School for the Deaf, the students on our campus programs are students who want direct communication with their teachers and peers. And so they want that community, that culture, and there's a larger number that are using sign language. and there are less that are using just spoken language. The students, when it says dual language, are using spoken language, but they additionally use American Sign Language to communicate as their primary mode of communication. So if you scroll down a bit more, since we've had a focus the past year on preschool and what we were doing with preschool, I just wanted to give you and share a graph that shows you what is happening in preschool. So there was a concern, I think, expressed by some parents that it would diminish the number of students in our listening and spoken language program. As you can see, that's really not the case. The 53% of the students in our preschool programs are using spoken language only. And the blue shows the students, the parents who have chosen, now that they've been given that option, the parents are choosing to do both. They're going to our ASL English program and they're going to our listening and spoken language program. And they have a choice at how much time they do that throughout the day. The ASL English only, those are the students, there's only 9% that are staying in there. So it's actually been a real boon for those students who really wanted options and really wanted to be able to go between both instead of being limited to only one or the other. Next one, interpreters. We report about the interpreters each year. If you could scroll down just a little bit. The interpreters are integral to what we provide to students throughout the state. So we have had a steady increase, and we're starting to level out now with the number of interpreters that we have throughout the state. We have 49 interpreters that are providing services to 192 students. The bulk of those students are in the Salt Lake area. That's what the blue on the graph shows. The orange is showing the northern part of the state. And then the western part of the state is the southern part of the state, is the smaller number of what students we serve. These are those students, though. If you think about it, if you're a student that uses sign language, you don't have anyone to talk to, you have one person that makes the world open to you every day. So that 9%, although it's small, is very important. So if you scroll down to audiology, we provide audiological services from 0 to 22 across the state. We often even get calls from Primary Children's and from the Department of Health asking us to assist because we have great services and we do a fantastic job. And so you see that we primarily are doing hearing evaluations for our 2018 students. There are hearing evaluations that are being conducted. The students served, that's going in on a regular basis and going back and forth. They've got a problem, we've got to fix it. We go in back and forth. We have FM systems. These are placed in classrooms throughout the state that we put a mic on the teacher and a loop over the child, and then the child can hear what the teacher is saying. And of course, we also give them as fits. We shouldn't say we fit. We don't always fit. There are some cases in which students do not have the services they need or cannot afford the services they need, that we help them with, or cochlear implants, just making sure that they're working properly and their hearing aids. So vocabulary growth. This is, I wanted to start when I talk about the vocabulary growth. There is a number, you can see a large list of assessments that we give our students. They get a great deal of assessments. The thing that's important to note, it's hard to report on these numbers on a large scale because our students are so individualized. Everyone has a very unique, different path. We may give one test to one student and not another, depending on the needs of the student and what the IEP team determines. So all these assessments could be conducted for a child, or it could be one or two. And as I talk about these results, I just want to impress upon you that all of these numbers are less than 10. So in statistic-wise, you can't take these numbers and generalize them. We can tell you a snapshot how the students are doing right now, the students we have in our program, but you wouldn't take those numbers and make generalizations on them, because the assessments that we're giving, first of all, there aren't assessments that are normed on deaf and hard of hearing that's also normed with the general population. So we have to take with a grain of salt any of the assessments we give because they're not normed on our students. And we have to look at the individual student and look at their individual progress. So I'll report those out today. Just want to make sure you have that caveat and that you're aware of that. Let's scroll down just a little bit. So this right here is our longitudinal vocabulary growth. So we always assess our students every year on the vocabulary. We give an expressive assessment and a receptive assessment. Receptively, you'll see that's only going up to second grade, because we found after second grade it was so invalid. It was not appropriate to do it beyond second grade, because the students beyond that grade level were using a sign language, and the test had to be so dramatically altered that it wasn't appropriate. So, and then the green shows our expressive test. Now that one's easier to extrapolate data, and again, still use it with caution, and also using that all these numbers are for students less than 10. If these students were making steady progress, 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, you would see a graph with a straight line across this top, and everybody would be excited because they made 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. You can see our students are making significantly more growth than 1 year's than what would be expected for 1 year. They are all doing a great job. So we are getting them from when they enter our program. We are making tremendous growth with those students that are on our campus programs to help them get to, and some of them may not be on grade level still, but their language has shot right up, and you've got to get the language up before you can do anything else. So that's a vocabulary assessment. And again, we're also doing language samples. Language samples are something that we wouldn't report out here. It's very individualized and gives the specific data that we need to do to work on with each child for their language growth. And it's an intensive process, and our teachers are doing a fantastic job with that. If you want to go switch to academic assessments, these are your typical reading, math, science, and language use is writing. So again, these are students, there are less than 10 in each of these grade levels. So we're looking at them. The line across the top shows the norm for the country. So we're comparing our students' performance with those across the national average. This assessment, which is called MAP, Measures of Academic Performance, is used by almost every deaf school in the nation. We're hoping by all of us using this one, this is the one that's most accessible for academics, and we're hoping that by all of us using it, we're soon going to have some norms that we can also compare them to other deaf kids across the nation. As it is right now, with this, they're not doing too bad. They're slightly below the national average for their performance. I anticipated as I was gathering this data that some of you may ask, how is this compared to previous years? Because what we did in the spring, we actually did test all the students in the spring. We brought them to campus at different times so that we wouldn't exceed any amount that would be a problem, and we kept them social distance. And we brought them back. Some, not all parents sent them in. So the ones who sent them in, this is the ones that we got the data on, which is one of the reasons why it's less than 10. And we gave assessments. And we did see a slight, as I was looking this, compared to last year, there was a few points difference in which they did have a slighter delay, but nothing significant. We didn't assess when we brought them back in language use or science because we just had limited time and we didn't want to kill them off in testing in one day. So I reported here the data from winter, and so you can see their progress from winter. Reached out to the directors to see if they're currently seeing any slides. Most of them said they're not noticing a big deal or a big difference with the students that we have served virtually. They have noticed that those students whose parents weren't as vigilant of getting them on the meeting time, those had a slight difference, but nothing huge. So I just wanted to share that out, that there actually isn't as big of a slide as we had anticipated. They seem to be doing all right. So if you want to scroll up, and that's all I've got for you today. If you have any questions for me, or we can save them till the end after Susan is presented and just do them all at the same time.
Well, let's see if there's any questions on your report, Associate Superintendent Tanner. Is there any questions from board members? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we'll continue. Associate Superintendent Patton, I believe you're next. Is that right, Superintendent Coleman?
Yes, I got a message from her that she needs to be unmuted.
Okay. Jeff, do you know if that's been done?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I am, any of these types of experiences where we can't see what we're used to seeing or hear what we're used to hearing, it always makes me think back to our students and the accessibility issues that they have, and how competent they are in compensating for that and making sure that they're getting the information they need, because I certainly have a difficult time with it. So I appreciate your patience. We'll make sure we get these things worked out for the next meeting. So I'm excited to talk about our School for the Blind, our outcomes for the 2019-20 school year. I think as we go through, you'll see that we really have made progress. And the biggest thing for me when I was reading through the data was that we didn't see the regression that we anticipated seeing based on going to an online format through the school or through the COVID-19 pandemic. So one thing also is, the School for the Blind, we are really focused on the expanded core curriculum and trying to make sure that that is infused in our parent-infant program, in our campus programs, in our outreach programs, in deaf-blind, and then, of course, we have our ECC, our post-high program. So I want you to notice that we really are trying, and I think we're doing a really great job in making sure that our students are accessing the expanded core curriculum along with the core curriculum. So I'm going to start, and I don't know where we are as far. So I'm going to just say where I'm at. So I'm going to start with the USB Parent-Infant Program. So I think and that's page 9. So these are our children from birth through age 3, and this was something, we went from seeing kids once a week, twice a month, to then going completely online. And still, we had nearly half a month progress for every month served. And I thought that was very impressive, and it showed the dedication of our providers. We were meeting families in parks when we went to an orange stage. We were meeting families in parks, making sure we could do outside visits, because it really is important that we're doing face-to-face visits as much as possible, because it's the training the parents as well. But the biggest thing is that we made a half a month progress for every month served. We served a total of 463 children and their families with 256 referrals. And that is compared to 217 referrals the last year. And so it'll be interesting to see this year what the referrals, how many referrals we are getting, because to begin with, from July 1st, we have seen a slight drop since then. Okay, so our campus programs, we had 59 total students, which, as Superintendent Tanner said, the blind school has a lot less students in our campus programs, and we have more of outreach. We're serving kids in our outreach programs. We had, and 59 total is from pre-K to our post-high program in our STEP program. And once again, what we're focusing on here is a lot of ECC. If you can imagine our blind visually impaired kids, it's critical that they learn those 9 areas of the expanded core. So for our assessments, I'm on academic assessments, on page 10. Our academic assessments, we used the Jerry Johns Basic Reading Inventory, and we did see a 1.5 grade level increase, which again was quite surprising based on the circumstances that happened from March on. We were prepared to go online, and I think we did a pretty good job. It would have been interesting to see what that outcome would have been had we not gone to a virtual or remote format. So these are our kids that are academic. We also have kids who, down to functional assessments, we also have students who have multiple disabilities and significant cognitive disabilities. That's where we see that's where we struggle. And as you can imagine, when COVID hit and those students were at home, that's where we had a huge accessibility issue. We were learning, we had online platforms, but they were not receiving the instruction which they would need as far as tactile communication, hands-on learning. It was very difficult. but we didn't see the regression that we had anticipated. We used 3 assessments for kids with multiple disabilities. We used the Oregon Project, and if you'll see here, it has the domains. I don't know, it's very small. Cognitive communication, compensatory vision, self-help, social skills, fine motor, gross motor, and overall growth. And the green is the 1920 school year. So as you can see, we did see growth on most of those domains compared to last year. So we were excited about that. I think we would have seen some larger progression, but we were happy about that progression. Then we also use an insight developmental checklist, and that is for kids that are up to age 6. So those are for our kids who are younger with multiple disabilities and significant cognitive issues. And we didn't see the progress that we would have liked to have seen. However, we didn't see a huge drop either. And I honestly anticipated that we would. So that was good news. But again, what we'll see this year, I'm hoping that we'll see some better progress. Our kids who have significant cognitive disabilities, a lot of times they have cortical visual impairment, which is damage to the brain portion of the visual system. It could be in the occipital lobe. It could be in the optic nerve. It could be in several different areas. So we use what's called the CVI range assessment, and that is a scale from 1 to 10. And we actually did not see any regression with our kids with cortical visual impairment. And what's so interesting about the cortical visual impairment is that it doesn't ever stay the same. From year to year, month to month, it fluctuates just because of the way that it's structured. So our CVI range, we were so excited that stayed the same. We didn't see the regression because, again, these kids were learning at home. I think it's a real testament to, number one, our teachers and how dedicated they were. We were providing material, hands-on material. The teachers were taking them to the homes, leaving them on the doorstep with instructions, communicating with parents, and then also a testament to the parents as far as them stepping in and really understanding that this is critical for their students, especially with all of the problems, all the issues that they were facing as well. So our expanded core curriculum, which we really use with all of the kids, but we have our expanded core curriculum coordinator who develops things like our short-term programs, our campus camps, and our post-high programs. We use an assessment that we assess all 9 skills of the expanded core curriculum. And those are skills that have been identified for blind, visually impaired, and deafblind students that it's essential for our kids to be able to not only access the core curriculum and academics, but also to be productive and happy people in life, which is much more important. So we're really strong on that. We did see a progression on all areas of the 9 areas of the expanded core, but I want you to especially notice the assistive technology and how we had really progressed there. That is extremely important because if we are utilizing assistive technology and we're teaching our blind, visually impaired students to access what's available in their world technology-wise, we are helping them access every part of their life and academics, and we're going to see a jump or an increase in the results academically because of the use of assistive technology. So that was one thing that I really wanted to point out. So our outreach program, that's where we have the majority of our students. We served 394 students in 27 school districts and 32 charter schools. And we serve those with our 19 itinerant teachers, and then we have 12 orientation and mobility specialists that go throughout the state as well. We use the Jerry Johns Reading Fluency Assessment also, just like with our campus programs. And again, this is really, we're really looking at our Braille proficiency. So at the bottom here, we have, I'm on page 13. At the graph on the bottom, we have large print fluency. It was an increase from fall to spring of 11.98%. Our functional Braille increase was 64.51%, and our academic Braille increased 34.39%. So again, we were excited about that we did see those increases. Our deaf-blind services, our deaf-blind serves every school district throughout the state. So we have our deaf-blind teachers. We have 15 deaf-blind teachers. And right now we have about 70 to 75 interveners that work one-on-one with the students. We have last year we served up to 133 students from birth through age 22. Deafblind is very unique and challenging, and one of the reasons it is because we do not have an assessment that we can use for all of our students. It's very personalized. We typically use a communication matrix, and that was used for 75 students this last year. And with that growth, this is another very interesting point. We did a fall and a spring, and the average improvement was 5.7%. And this was a 3.15 improvement from the 2018-19 school year. I think that we need to look at that and realize that this could have been a result of several components. One of the components is we were doing the communication matrix has an interview portion for teachers, for other caregivers, and for parents, and we were really focused on the parents giving that interview. So I think that was one of the reasons why we saw such a high percentage, because we typically don't see that high of a percentage when our students, when we're assessing them in school. But also it kind of opened our eyes as far as, well, maybe we're not looking at the right things. Maybe the parents are seeing things that we're not seeing, so we need to involve them more. So I thought that was telling as well. So that is our school's data the School for the Blind's data. I, again, am happy to answer any questions. I felt like, it will be fun to see what's happening this year with the progress, because we made progress and it was a difficult year, very difficult year. So any questions at all?
Questions or comments? Excuse me. Questions or comments from board members regarding Associate Superintendent Patton's portion of the report? I'm not seeing any. Superintendent Coleman.
Well, I just, as we wrap this up, I want to just say we always, doing this annual report is, of course, as helpful for us as it is to anyone. But we've tried to design it in a way with the flexibility that we have so that anyone in the public or legislators or board members or parents in our school or our staff members could all look at this and find the most critical vital data to actually assess what is going on. If the taxpayers of Utah were saying, why do we actually have a school for the deaf and the blind instead of just expecting all of the LEAs to meet the needs of deaf and blind kids like they do with other students with special needs? This is, I think, a place where they could see, okay, with these low incidence disabilities, it really does require highly specialized approaches, or else these kids would essentially kind of just be left behind, for lack of a better term. And that's what happens in some states where they don't have the kind of support that our forebears had to develop this organization. And so I like this because it's, as you can see, it's very difficult for us to find meaningful data, and the traditional assessments that the generalized school system uses is not sufficient for what our students need. And we're always looking for better tools, but at least for the last many years and during this administration, we've used consistent data from the same assessments that make the most sense at this point for our kids. And it's nice to see the progress, and I'm grateful that the associates put bar graphs year by year in there so that you can kind of see the trend. And especially with COVID this year, I thought that was helpful. So if there are no questions, we will wrap up that portion of our report on the annual report.
We will have a couple here. Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, superintendents and the assistant superintendents. I just wanted to make one comment and then ask one question. I know how hard it is to do online deaf education. And I've appreciated what they have worked on long before the pandemic came in. So I appreciate the foresight on that. The question I have this communication matrix, or your testing, standardized testing or the testing you were talking about, have you vetted that with our assessment department or with Darren at all?
No, and that is not a standardized assessment.
Sorry, I was looking at here instead standardized. I'm just saying. So have you? Where does the comparison come on that? How do you compare student to student or student to other schools to school?
Well, it is on a point system. So there's 7 areas of communication. There's 7 levels of communication, and then there's 4 domains. So the 7 levels are pre-intentional, intentional, and it goes down all the way to abstract communication. So, and then there's 4 domains being 1, refuse, reject, obtain, and it goes all the way, and one of them is a social. So if you could see my hands, it would be so much better, Board Member Belknap, because you could then understand, I'm sure, what I was saying. However, so each student is assessed with, again, an interview portion and observation from the teacher of the deaf-blind. And we determine what level of communication they're on. And typically these kids are on like a pre-intentional, intentional, which like a pre-intentional would be a baby at birth. And then progressing the normal levels of communication. So we assess them, and that's through observation and interview. And then we're looking, we can look how in those 4 areas, we can then make progress, say, okay, so for an intentional communication, for them to have completed intentional communication, we have to look at, have they accomplished these skills? Or on any of the ones that are further down as well, have they accomplished these skills? So we are comparing students to students. However, we're just looking at year to year, really. So we do the communication.
This is your formative assessment to plan your year.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I was going on. Yes, it's formative, and we assess all year long. So we get multiple samples.
Okay. Board Member Scott Nielsen, your hand's raised.
No, that answered my question.
Okay.
I will say, if I could say this, we're the only state that is doing the communication matrix or any assessment for all students who are identified as deafblind. And again, the very difficult thing is there are no standardized assessments. So there's really no way that we can assess all of the students with the communication matrix. But Utah is the only state that is using communication matrix to assess a large portion of our students.
Thank you. Superintendent, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Thank you for this. This is an information item, and this is our annual report, and thank you for all the work that's gone into it. This is all part of the transparency and get this out to the public, and it takes a lot of work, and appreciate the work that you've done on it. We're looking forward to continued betterments in your next annual report. So we've got we know that you know your challenges that are ahead of you, and we're looking forward to see how you deal with those. So thank you. So this concludes this part of our agenda item.